Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 8 years we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show. We're meeting with Nick Molina of VaporFi. And VaporFi, a leader in the e-cigarette and vapor industry, is on a mission to change the way you smoke. And we're going to talk to Nick about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we got a great show.
Are you looking for a franchise that delivers? Businesses will always need shipping, and for more than 25 years, loyal customers have depended on Unishippers for reliable savings and exceptional customer service. Unishippers is focused on just one thing: helping small and medium-sized businesses save time and money on all their shipping needs. And as the largest reseller of complete shipping services in the country, we have the buying power to ensure that we succeed. The Unishippers franchise offers low startup costs, no equipment or real estate required because they're not retail, residual income, and a quality of life and work-life balance. For more information on becoming a Unishippers franchisee, go to www.unishippers.com and click Franchise Opportunities, or call Franchise Development at 801-708-5822. That's 801-708-5822. Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 8 years we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. We're meeting with Nick Molina of the VaporFi franchise opportunity. And VaporFi, a leader in the e-cigarette and vapor industry, is on a mission to change the way you smoke. And we're going to go right into our interview with Nick Molina.
Started in early 2010, January 2010 to be exact, and 5.5 years isn't typically a long time in business, but in this business, it is. It's really the early days of vaping, the very early days of vaping, and we launched with our first brand, which was South Beach Smoke, and it was an online only strategy. We like to say we had 1 foot in, 1 foot out in the business at that point, because the FDA was challenging the importation of electronic cigarette products into the U.S. and the use of them.
Right.
We're trying to classify them as medical devices, and there was a court battle going on between one of the larger vape companies at the time and the FDA. The FDA ended up losing that and losing it at the appellate level, which opened up the doors for us to say, okay, this is now a business that has just eliminated a tremendous risk in terms of its viability. And we're all in now, and at that point we really ramped up. We started branching out into manufacturing our own products, distributing them, selling them through authorized retailers, as well as continuing our online growth strategy. And
that's great.
Yeah.
When did you know, Nick? At what point, that it was franchisable? I mean, I know that you guys have worked with Franchise Creator. I mean, but at what point did you know that you can franchise this concept?
Well, so fast forward to early 2013, and the FDA, as part of their, the mandate that came down, which was that they could not regulate it as a medical device, but they could regulate it as a tobacco product. Ironically, even though there's no tobacco in it.
Right.
But there was a lot of fear about where the product would be available for sale, whether online was a business that was going to be around or not. And our business being so heavily concentrated online, we felt it was necessary for us to mitigate that risk, and we felt that if online sales were restricted in any way, that brick and mortar stores were going to have a huge opportunity. So we thought that we needed to get our feet wet in the brick and mortar space, the vape shop space, and we opened up our first 2 stores at the end of 2013, in November of 2013. And the idea was, let's operate these stores. Let's see what kind of success we have. Let's build a box economic that makes sense, and see it, test it, and see if it works. And we quickly realized that it did work. And I would say that Q1 of 2014, we realized that this is something that had multi-store appeal to us.
Right.
And in a space where there was so much competition and so much rapid growth, in order for us to be a market leader, in order for us to be the Starbucks of the vape industry, we were going to have to go the franchise route, because we just weren't going to be able to open up stores on our own.
Right.
Without the help of franchisees. So to answer your question, I think Q1 of 2014 is when we realized that we had the makings of a strong franchise opportunity here.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm a big fan of this industry. As a former smoker, I mean, when I heard, about the whole vapor thing, I was really excited, because I have to admit, I hated giving up smoking. It was really difficult to do. So once I heard about the whole concept, and this was, I guess you're right, going back 5 or 6 years ago, and I remember trying my first one, and it was just okay at the time. You know what I mean? It was new, and there was problems with the batteries and things like that. And I mean, it's amazing how the industry over the last 5-6 years, I mean, has really evolved with technology, hasn't it?
It really has. I mean, technology's played a great role, not only in the way we sell our products and make them available and operate our business, but more so in the evolution of the product itself. I mean, you've seen the improvements firsthand.
Oh yeah.
And even the look of the device has changed dramatically over the last 5 years, specifically over the last 24 months. I mean, it just seems like every quarter there's new innovations out there.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest tasks that we're tasked with internally, is to make sure that we stay in front of technology and this this evolution, product evolution, so that we're able to offer consumers the products, the latest and greatest products that they're asking for. And when you're running multi-store retail, the challenges associated with that. You need to make sure you're buying right. You're not overbuying inventory, and so you're not writing down huge amounts of inventory. And then we seem to have a pretty good. We've had some pretty good success in doing that.
That's great. If you guys were at a franchise show, Nick, and and someone came up to your booth and they said, the typical question always seems to be, so what do you guys do? I mean, how do you typically respond to the question?
We're in a business that's projected to do $7 billion globally this year, domestically pushing $3 billion, and it's growing at about 30% a year. So we help smokers find a better, smarter alternative.
Yeah.
And we're at the cusp of this industry. So imagine being in the early days of the Starbucks revolution or the video store franchise revolution. That's kind of the position that we feel we're in today. It's a new retail concept in a very high growth sector that is highly profitable, with healthy margins, and we're doing something that we think is good, that feels good.
And I think that's important too. You know what I mean? Is at the end of the day, to say that you are doing something good in addition to making money. And it's amazing with the numbers how it's up to, I guess, $7 billion globally, Nick. I mean, that's incredible. How if you look at the growth over the last 5 10 years in this particular category, it is amazing how it's growing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, 7 years ago it was zero.
I guess you're right. It was pretty much
to
nothing at the time, right? I mean, there really wasn't that really alternative out there, and now it's people are starting to understand it. So I think that's great. What's one of the questions we like to ask our guests on the show is what's been one of the most interesting things that's happened to you since launching this whole concept?
I guess it really has to do with the launching of our brick and mortar concept. To see something, to make a complete pivot from a company perspective is typically not easy. We were doing tens of millions of dollars a certain way in revenue, and we saw a shift coming, and we got ahead of it, and we pivoted pretty darn quickly. And to see that not only be executed successfully, but see success after we executed it, and see it develop, see it grow, and see it improve, I think it gave us a tremendous amount of confidence. I think it gave us a tremendous amount of respect in the business. And it was just neat to watch, it all happened in such a short period of time. It was an idea in June of 2013, and we had it was open in November of 2013. I mean, that's a pretty quick pivot.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's amazing. Yeah. The majority of our listeners, we call them aspiring entrepreneurs, Nick. I mean, most of them have it in their mind. They want to get into franchising. What characteristics do you look for, or will you be looking for in your franchisees?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think probably one of the most important things is the person needs to have an entrepreneurial spirit. It doesn't mean they've had to do something entrepreneurial in the past, but they have to have that spirit. They have to have that bug in their tummy. They need to be able to want to be independent and take on risks as needed, mitigate those risks, which is kind of what you do with a franchise, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and so we're looking for somebody that's got that entrepreneurial bug. We're looking for somebody that has had success at some level in their life. It doesn't have to be in their own business. It could be in the corporate world. It could be in their personal life, raising their kids and their families. Somebody that's tasted success, likes it, and wants more of it. So that's important for us. A good work ethic is definitely important for us. We're not looking for those guys that are just looking to write a check and sit back and build it and it'll come. I mean, you got to work it. You got to work it. You got to get engaged. You got to. It doesn't mean you can't be an investor type person that has a good team with him, but we want you engaged at some level. It doesn't mean that you're going to be opening your store on a daily basis or visiting the store on a daily basis, but we want to make sure that you're at least looking at the numbers and paying attention to what's going on in your business.
Yeah, I think that's a great description of the characteristics, and I'd probably even say, it's someone interested in getting into this industry as well. It's not easy for, I guess I would like to say someone like myself to say, okay, well, I'm going to go into the vapor industry. I mean, it's not really something you can do on your own. I mean, you've been through a lot of the trials and tribulations to get to this point, you know what I mean? So you don't have to make the same mistake. So somebody getting involved, with International Vapor, it's so much easier. They can avoid all those roadblocks, can't they?
They really can. I mean, when you open up a VaporFi store, you are. I think you're getting a deal because you are going to avoid very costly mistakes.
Exactly.
You're going to avoid. You're going to pay in terms of a franchise fee and royalty a lot less than the mistakes you would make. If you didn't go the VaporFi franchise route. We've made those mistakes. We know what they are.
Right.
Even if you look at even just the buying power that we have because we manufacture our own products. If you go out and buy comparable products to resell in your vape shop, you're going to end up paying more than what you're going to be able to buy our products for.
Yeah, I think that's well said. That's fantastic.
What's the values?
Yeah, what's the training like, Nick? I mean, once somebody decides, they say, wow, this is great, and you come to an agreement. Is there some type of training? I mean, do they come down to Miami? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's an initial training, and then there's ongoing training that just continues ongoing.
Right.
So the initial training. So what's going to happen is you're going to come down, and you're going to spend about 3 days down here in Miami. You're going to do a couple of days of classroom training. That's going to be broken down into actual product training, product, how to use them, and so forth, how to recommend them. There's going to be the operations training, how to bring up a sale, how to check your inventory, how to look at your KPIs or key performance indicators and see, see where there may be signs of trouble, where there may be room for improvement. We're going to work with you on that, identifying those. And then the last day, the third day, is actually spent in a store. One of our company-owned stores. We've got 11 company-owned stores, so we'll spend it in one of our company-owned stores, actually working behind the counter, talking to real customers, watching our staff talk to real customers, letting you yourself talk to our customers. So it gives you leave here after 3 days with a pretty good understanding of all the different things you need to do. You need to continue to work on that, and you're going to leave with a lot of material. We expect you as a franchisee to continue to absorb that material and absorb that information. And then when it's opening day, we're going to fly out, and we're going to spend a couple of days with you on your grand opening. We're going to be in the store with you. We're going to talk to customers with you. We're going to stay there until you feel like you've got your hands around this thing pretty good. And then we're going to leave, and we're going to leave you alone for 15 days. And, for some people that's great. They can't wait for us to leave, and for some people it's a little bit of an anxiety.
Sure.
But we're going to stay in touch with you on the phone for the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to come back in about 15 days. Between 15 and 30 days, we're going to be back. We're going to be back in your store. We're going to say, okay, here's what we saw. We've been looking at your KPIs. We think you're doing this right, and this right. We think you need to look and focus more on this. Maybe your average tickets low. Maybe you're not, upselling or selling accessories as much, or maybe you're not giving customers really what they need to, provide a good customer experience. Let's focus on these things, and so we're going to fine tune you. And we'll spend, we'll probably spend 2 days in your store again. Then we'd typically like to come back to you every 30 to 60 days. We like to come back in, some more time with you. So it's an ongoing thing. I mean, we look at this relationship really as being totally aligned. Our success depends on your success.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's the whole key to franchising as well. And I guess a typical day, would be like, what's interesting that I find about this industry, Nick, is that I guess a lot of the interaction with the customers is really educating the customers at this point as well, isn't it? I mean, there's probably getting a lot of questions because, as you were mentioning earlier, the technology changes and new flavors and all, sorts of interesting things are happening right now. So I suspect there's a lot of, education towards the customers, isn't there?
There's education on different levels. There's education for the first-time users, smokers that want to make the switch to vaping that really know nothing about it other than some news reports and some occasional friend that vapes. And then you've got the folks that have been vaping, but because there's so much technology evolving in the space that new things come out, and you're constantly educating them and showing them, and it's really a neat business to be in, just because you're never standing still, and education is a huge part of the process, and it kind of creates almost a community. It creates a customer that comes to your store, hangs out in your stores, tries the different flavors. Wants to learn about what's coming out, what just came out, what's coming out in 2 months, what's coming out in 3 months. Have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? Yeah. That's definitely a big part of the business and the culture.
It is interesting. I think I remember, getting a couple of different brands over the years. You say, okay, what the hell do I do with it now? Like the first time you look at it, you're right. The first time user is probably like, okay, what do I do? Is it going to explode? Is it going to, I mean, so you're right. There probably are, as you say, there's different levels of questions, aren't there? In educating the customers, which I think makes it interesting for, the franchisee. So I think that's terrific. In studying your background, Nick, you came off to me as a real, entrepreneur, and one of the things when we have guests like yourself on the show is, what advice could you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? Because we find that a lot of them are very confused. A lot of them just don't even know where to begin. They're thinking franchising, but they just don't know where to start. So what would you say to them in their quest to buy a franchise?
Well, I think before you dive into which franchisor you want to team up with, I think you have to look at which type of franchise do you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be in the food business? Do you want to pick something you're going to enjoy doing? Pick
Right.
something that you're going to want to be engaged in. Pick something that, you're going to feel good about waking up in the morning and going to do. So something you're passionate about, which is really kind of what's great about the vaping space is that so many franchisees are actual customers of VaporFi turned franchisees.
Right.
Or just vapers in general turned franchisees that go to VaporFi for their franchise. So pick something. Think about it. Don't just go to Subway because they've got the most. Not that they're not a franchise, but what's the right thing for you? And only really you can answer that. So once you kind of make that determination, I think the next step to make sure you pick the right one in that space. And I urge them all to do your homework. Read that FDD. That FDD is there for your protection. Pay special attention to the management team. I think that is key.
Yeah.
What's the history of that management team? Have they done this before? Do they have a track record for success, or do they have a track record for failures? You're going to find it all out. They're going to be required to disclose all of that in the FDD. So read it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So I can ask you the next question because you're the CEO of the company. So where do you see International Vapor in 5 years down the road, Nick?
Well, I think if you're talking about International Vapor Group as a parent company, it's one thing. If are you more interested in VaporFi 5 years from now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either or is fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think International Vapor Group, I think, will continue to be an influential business company in the vapor space, and I think VaporFi will play a significant, if not the most significant role for International Vapor Group. I think VaporFi's mission is really to become the Starbucks of vape stores. We've been called that before by the media. We take that as a huge compliment, as a huge challenge, because we certainly have a long way to go to make that happen. But we want to become the go-to source when people think about vapor products. We want to try to and that pops up.
Do you see it expanding? Internationally as well, Nick. Because with franchising, I guess that's always possible, isn't it? To go to these international markets a lot quicker than if you had to do it on your own. So do you see?
We do look at. We are looking at the international markets. We currently do have a store in Panama, so we've already explored and entered Panama. We're in the process of completing a deal in South Africa, and we're talking to a couple of different joint venture partners for Europe, different countries in Europe. So it is something we're looking at. It's too big a market to ignore, and I think VaporFi has built a solid brand domestically in the U.S., where the rest of the world is kind of taking notice and are looking to bring. There's an affinity for American brands in foreign markets, and VaporFi seems to be that brand in the vape space market that is getting a lot of attention.
That's great. How can our listeners get more information on becoming a franchisee with VaporFi, Nick? Any websites that they can go to get more information?
Yeah, absolutely. We have all of our information is online at vaporfi.com.
Okay.
If you follow the link on the website under the About Us, it'll take you to our franchise page. Mm-hmm. And we've got all sorts of information for you there, and it's going to give you a way to get it. Go ahead and reach us, get in touch with us.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you again, Nick, for coming on the show. I think this is a great product, great franchise. So I'm going to keep my eye, because I think this is a very interesting industry as far as those industries to keep your eye on. So this is really fantastic. So I'd like to invite you back next year as you continue to grow.
Perfect. Thank you for having me, Murray. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Nick. We'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
Franchisers, are you looking to reach aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise? Are you looking to reach a highly educated audience on franchising? For over 8 years, Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts and attorneys, and our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919. That's 610-905-2919.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. You know, we've been hosting Franchise Interviews many years now, and you can actually hear the show in a number of different places today. You can go to, of course, franchiseinterviews.com, where we have our interviews arranged alphabetically. We also have interviews arranged by category. So if you have a particular industry that you're interested in, you can go to the category of your choice and check out all the different interviews that we've done over the years. Our show's been syndicated in a number of different places. Of course, you can hear our show on blogtalkradio.com. We've been working with Blog Talk Radio for many years now, and you can hear live shows there, and then you can download them as an MP3. You can hear our shows on Stitcher.com. You can hear our interviews on, I think it's pronounced, I always want to call it Blueberry.com, but it's BLUBRRY.com, which is another podcast service. You can now hear our shows on iTunes.com, and of course, you can hear our shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you're a diehard fan to our show on Live365.com. And we have over the years over 420 shows. So if you were to listen to Live365.com for 2 weeks, there's a chance that you may not even hear the same show twice. So that's how many shows we've recorded over the years. But today's Great Quote in Franchising podcast comes from Darren Guccione, and Darren is the CEO and co-founder of Keeper Security, Inc. And what's interesting about this podcast, we had Darren on the show as the founder and the creator of Keeper, which is the world's most downloaded password manager and digital vault. And Darren is a real entrepreneur. And one of the questions that we ask on the show is, what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur or franchipreneur or someone looking to buy a franchise? And that question is usually directed to someone who has been directly involved in franchising over the years. But again, Darren is a real background is in accounting and business, and I thought his response was just as great as anything that we've heard on the show. So here we go with Darren Guccione, the CEO and co-founder of Keeper Security, Inc.
Amazing. It's amazing technology. In studying your background, Darren, I mean, I was mentioning earlier, I mean, the majority of our listeners, again, we call them aspiring franchipreneurs. You know, they want to go into their own business, and they're kind of like heading towards the franchise alternative. What advice would you give to them? Because you're certainly, in studying you, certainly classified as an entrepreneur. So what advice would you give to them?
Well, my background is engineering technology. I'm also a CPA, and
right.
I've always had an admiration for franchises. One of the things that I love about franchises, among other things, is that you can analyze the different franchise models that are out there, the brands, the type of businesses, and you can quickly identify which ones are successful. And typically, they give you a roadmap of what you need to do to execute. When you start a business without a franchise roadmap, you typically don't necessarily know where you're necessarily going to go or wind up. And so you get a greater sense of security and guidance when you can pick a franchise model that, A, fits within, your goals in life, your interests in life, and B, provides a really sound infrastructure for you to build a business with a great support system around you. Most businesses that are one-off businesses don't have that. So there's a greater sense of, uncertainty out there when a business owner or an entrepreneur as you've outlined it, decides to, pursue a franchise versus doing something completely fresh and new. I think the risk profile of doing the latter is much greater. So that's my response to that.
No, it's fantastic advice. So any final thoughts, Darren?
Fantastic interview with Darren Guccione. So I want to thank everyone for making our show such a success, and this podcast has really just taken off over the years, and we got some really great quotes in franchising coming up. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you again soon with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising from Franchise Interviews. Take care, everyone.